Rina Shimabukuro, a vibrant 20-year-old, lived a life brimming with promise. She worked as a graphic designer, her days filled with creative projects and evenings with friends. Okinawa, a beautiful island with a unique blend of Japanese and American cultures, was her home. The presence of U.S. military bases, a significant part of the island's landscape, had subtly shaped the local lifestyle. Rina often found solace in the familiar routine of an evening walk. On this particular evening, after a long day at work, she decided to stroll along the canal, a path she'd taken countless times before. The air was warm, carrying the scent of blooming flowers and the distant sound of music. She told her boyfriend, Kenneth, she was going for a walk, a casual remark that now echoed with a chilling finality. Little did she know, this simple act would irrevocably alter her life and the lives of everyone around her. She felt a sense of peace as she walked, the city lights reflecting in the canal water. It was a night like any other, filled with the quiet hum of urban life. Kenneth Gatson, a former U.S. Marine who had settled in Okinawa, had a complex past. He had served several years on the island before returning to the United States in 2011. After his honorable discharge, he found work and eventually met Rina. Their relationship blossomed, and they shared a small apartment. While locals often embraced a more relaxed pace of life, influenced by the military presence, Kenneth sometimes carried a quiet intensity. He had disclosed to friends his struggles with unsettling thoughts since childhood, fantasies of control and violence. Despite these internal battles, Rina had seen a gentle side to him, and they had built a life together. The evening of Rina's disappearance began like any other. Kenneth had sent her a text message, "Hope you had a peaceful night," which she had read. He waited at home, a subtle unease beginning to creep into his mind as the hours passed. Weeks turned into months, and the investigation into Rina's disappearance intensified. Investigators meticulously reviewed surveillance footage from the industrial area along the canal, the last known location of Rina's phone. Hundreds of vehicles were recorded, each one scrutinized for any sign of the missing woman. Then, a red SUV caught their attention. It wasn't an uncommon vehicle, but its presence near the canal on the night of Rina's disappearance was significant. Further analysis of the footage revealed something even more disturbing: a black suitcase in the back of the SUV. The discovery sent a shockwave through the investigation team, a chilling confirmation of their worst fears. The suitcase was taken into evidence, and forensic analysis would soon reveal its horrifying contents. The contents of the black suitcase were the devastating truth. Inside lay the decomposing body of Rina Shimabukuro. The harsh Okinawan heat had taken its toll, but forensic experts confirmed her identity through DNA testing. The discovery sent ripples of grief and outrage throughout Okinawa and beyond. The seemingly ordinary family man, Kenneth Gatson, now stood accused of a heinous crime. The local community, once accustomed to a certain quietude, was now gripped by shock and disbelief. The case of Rina Shimabukuro, a young woman with a bright future, had taken a tragic and irreversible turn. The simple act of a late-night walk had become her final journey. Kenneth Gatson eventually confessed to the crime, leading investigators to a forested area where Rina's body had been discarded. His confession detailed a descent into disturbing fantasies and a violent act fueled by those dark thoughts. Rina's parents, devastated by their loss, demanded the death penalty, a punishment still legally applicable in Japan for particularly brutal crimes. The case ignited a fierce debate about justice and the complexities of mental health. The international community watched with a heavy heart, the tragic story of Rina Shimabukuro becoming a stark reminder of the darkness that can exist beneath the surface of everyday life. The question that lingered was, how could such a senseless act occur, shattering a young life and leaving an enduring scar on a community? The silence in the room was thick, heavy with unspoken truths. Detective Miller leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. "Mr. Gatson," he began, his voice low and steady, "you've told us your story. But there are still details we need to clarify. The fantasies you described, how long had they been consuming you?" Gatson shifted in his chair, avoiding Miller's eyes. He mumbled something about fleeting thoughts, shadows in his mind. Miller pressed on, gently but persistently. These weren't just fleeting thoughts, were they? They became obsessions. And those obsessions led to a very real, very tragic act.
Can you walk me through the entire sequence of events again? From the moment you saw Rena that day, everything. Gatson's voice cracked. He recounted the encounter, the escalating feelings, the spiraling darkness. He spoke of a loss of control, a compulsion he couldn't fight. The details were disturbing, a chilling testament to the depths of his depravity. Miller listened intently, his expression grim. He knew the confession was significant, but the full picture was still emerging. The investigation wasn't truly over, it was merely entering a new, more somber phase. The salty air did little to ease the ache in Akari's heart. She stared out at the vast expanse of the ocean, the same ocean Rena had loved. Hiroshi squeezed her hand, his own eyes glistening. The police had informed them of Gatson's confession, but the words offered little comfort. The image of their bright, vibrant daughter, now gone, was seared into their minds. She always loved the sea, Akari whispered, her voice choked with emotion. She said it held so many secrets. Hiroshi nodded, unable to speak. They had spent the last few days in a daze, struggling to comprehend the senselessness of Rena's death. The pain was a constant, suffocating presence. They clung to each other, finding solace in their shared grief. The townspeople had been kind, offering condolences and support, but nothing could fill the void Rena had left behind. They knew the legal proceedings would be difficult, but their focus was on remembering Rena, her laughter, her dreams, her infectious spirit. They hoped that justice would be served, not for vengeance, but to ensure that what happened to Rena would never happen to another young woman. The ocean continued its rhythmic crashing, a mournful soundtrack to their enduring sorrow. Detective Miller studied the photographs, each image a stark reminder of the brutality of the crime. The forested area was secluded, a place where darkness could easily hide. The discovery of Rena's body had been a grim culmination of a terrifying ordeal. He zoomed in on the details, the positioning of the body, the surrounding foliage. The forensic team had meticulously documented the scene, collecting evidence that would be crucial in the trial. He noted the lack of any signs of a struggle, suggesting Rena had likely known her attacker, or at least felt a degree of trust. The location itself felt significant, a place where Gatson had retreated to indulge his darkest impulses. Miller felt a familiar weariness settle over him. These cases took a toll, exposing him to the worst aspects of human nature. But he remained committed to seeking justice for Rena and her family. He knew the road ahead would be long, but he wouldn't rest until the case was closed. The evidence spoke volumes, painting a clear picture of Gatson's guilt. Now, it was up to the legal system to deliver the appropriate consequences. The courtroom was silent, the air thick with anticipation. Kenneth Gatson stood before the judge, his shoulders slumped, his gaze averted. He had pleaded guilty to the charge of murder, accepting responsibility for his horrific actions. Rena's parents sat in the front row, their hands clasped tightly. Akari's eyes welled up with tears, but she maintained a stoic facade. Hiroshi's jaw was set, his expression unreadable. The prosecutor delivered a concise summary of the case, highlighting the evidence and the devastating impact of Rena's death. Gatson's lawyer offered a plea for leniency, citing Gatson's remorse and mental state. But the judge's decision was clear. He sentenced Gatson to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. A collective sigh seemed to ripple through the courtroom. For Rena's parents, it was a moment of both closure and profound sadness. Justice had been served, but the pain of their loss would remain forever. The courtroom emptied slowly, leaving behind a lingering sense of grief and the weight of a life tragically cut short. The setting sun cast long shadows across the beach, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Hiroshi and Akari walked hand in hand, the gentle sound of the waves their only companion. Akari traced the lines on a smooth, gray stone she had found. Rena loved collecting stones, she said softly. She said each one had its own story. Hiroshi nodded, squeezing her hand. She had a way of finding beauty in everything. They paused, watching the waves crash against the shore. A sense of peace had begun to settle over them, a quiet acceptance of their loss. The pain hadn't vanished, but it had softened, becoming a dull ache rather than a sharp, agonizing wound. They knew they would never fully recover from Rena's death, but they had found a way to carry her memory with them.
The ocean, once a source of sorrow, now held a bittersweet comfort. It was a reminder of the joy Rena had brought into their lives, and the enduring power of love. They continued their walk, their steps slow and deliberate, their hearts filled with a mixture of grief and gratitude.
Miller traced a line across the map, his eyes narrowed. Gatson's confession had been a relief, a closure to a nightmare.
But something still felt off.
The details Gatson provided about Rena's last days seemed incomplete, almost rehearsed. He'd mentioned a secluded cabin in the woods, but the description was vague, lacking specifics. Miller believed Gatson wasn't the sole perpetrator.
There was a subtle shift in his demeanor during the interrogation, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. He needed to revisit the evidence, to find the missing piece. The victim's phone records, the security footage from the town's edge, he needed to re-examine everything with fresh eyes. A nagging feeling persisted, a sense that Rena's death was connected to something larger, something hidden beneath the quiet facade of this small town. He felt a growing unease, a premonition that the case was far from over, and that another layer of darkness was waiting to be uncovered. The forest held secrets, and Miller was determined to find them.
Akari wound the key of the music box. A delicate melody filled the air, melancholic and haunting.
Hiroshi watched her, a shadow crossing his face. He'd noticed a change in Akari since they arrived in this town. A quiet sadness clung to her, a sense of loss he couldn't quite decipher. She'd been unusually withdrawn, spending hours wandering the streets, seemingly lost in thought. He worried about her, about the memories she carried. He knew she'd never fully recovered from the tragedy that had forced them to relocate. The music box seemed to stir something within her, a bittersweet remembrance of a life left behind. "Are you all right, Akari?" he asked softly. She nodded, her eyes fixed on the intricate carvings of the box. "It's just a reminder," she whispered.
"Of what was?"
Hiroshi gently took her hand. He wanted to offer comfort, to ease her pain, but he felt helpless. He wished he could take away the sorrow that haunted her, but some wounds ran too deep to heal quickly. He knew that the peace they sought wouldn't come easily, not while the ghosts of the past lingered. The security footage was blurry, the image grainy, but Miller could make out the general shape of the man standing with Gatson. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and wore a dark coat that concealed his features. The alley was shrouded in darkness, the only light source a flickering street lamp that cast lone, distorted shadows.
Gatson seemed agitated, gesturing emphatically as he spoke to the unknown figure.
Miller enhanced the image, trying to sharpen the details, but it was a losing battle.
The man's face remained obscured, a deliberate attempt to conceal his identity.
The conversation appeared tense, punctuated by hushed tones and furtive glances.
Miller ran the image through facial recognition software, but it yielded no results. This was a professional, someone skilled at avoiding detection.
He felt a surge of frustration.
Gatson had lied, and he was protecting someone. The question now was, who? And what was the connection between this mysterious man and Rena's death?
Miller knew he was getting closer to the truth, but the path ahead was shrouded in darkness. Miller stared at the town from the overlook, the sprawling valley spread out before him like a puzzle. The town seemed peaceful from this distance, a quaint collection of houses and shops.
But Miller knew that beneath the surface lay a network of secrets and lies.
He focused on the dense forest surrounding the town, his gaze drawn to a single, isolated cabin nestled deep within the trees. It was a small, unassuming structure, almost hidden from view. He felt a pull towards it, a sense that it held the key to unlocking the mystery of Rena's death. He dispatched a team to investigate, instructing them to proceed with caution. This cabin felt different, somehow more significant than the other properties in the woods. He had a feeling that Rena had been there, and that the answers he sought lay within its walls. The forest seemed to watch him, silent and watchful, as he prepared to delve deeper into the darkness. The waves whispered secrets to Akari as she stood on the beach, the setting sun painting the sky in fiery hues. She held the smooth, gray stone, its coolness a comforting presence in her hand. The stone reminded her of her grandmother, a woman who had possessed a quiet strength and an uncanny ability to see beyond the surface. Akari closed her eyes, letting the sound of the waves wash over her, and a sense of peace settled within her. She felt a connection to this place, to the ocean, to the memories of her past. The stone wasn't just a stone, it was a link to something larger, something enduring. A faint smile touched her lips. She understood now. Rena hadn't just been a victim, she had been searching for something, too. And Akari, somehow, felt connected to that search. The journey wouldn't be easy, but she was ready to face it, to honor Rena's memory, and to find her own path towards healing. The ocean stretched before her, vast and limitless, offering a glimmer of hope in the fading light. Miller ran a gloved hand over the music box's intricate carvings. It felt strangely cold to the touch, despite the warm air of the shop. "This is unusual," he murmured, his eyes scanning the detailed depictions of mythical creatures. Gatson shifted his weight, his hand instinctively moving towards the concealed weapon beneath his jacket. "Are you sure about this, Miller? This place gives me the creeps." Miller ignored him, his attention completely absorbed by the object. He noticed a small, almost invisible latch on the side. With a gentle click, the box sprang open, releasing a melody that was both haunting and strangely familiar. The tune seemed to vibrate in the air, causing a faint tremor in the floorboards. Gatson flinched. "What is that sound?" he asked, his voice tight. Miller frowned. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I have a feeling it's important." The melody grew stronger, and the shadows in the shop seemed to deepen, swirling around them like living things. A sense of unease settled over Miller, a feeling that they had stumbled upon something far more dangerous than they had anticipated. He felt a prickling sensation on the back of his neck, as if they were being watched. The moon cast long, distorted shadows across the beach, turning the familiar landscape into something eerie and unknown. Akari continued to hold the stone, its faint glow the only source of light in the darkness. The melody from the music box echoed in her mind, a persistent, unsettling refrain. She felt a strange connection to the stone, a sense that it was more than just a trinket. It was a key, a link to something lost. A rustling in the nearby trees made her jump. She turned, her heart pounding in her chest. A figure stood silhouetted against the darkness, its features obscured by the shadows. It didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. Akari felt a wave of fear wash over her, but she stood her ground. The stone in her hand pulsed with a little more light. She had a feeling this figure was connected to her grandmother, to the secrets she had kept hidden. The air grew cold, and the sound of the waves seemed to intensify, as if the ocean itself was holding its breath. The figure took a step forward. The hidden chamber was a labyrinth of dusty shelves and forgotten relics. The air was thick with the smell of old paper and decay. Miller and Gatson moved slowly, their flashlights illuminating rows of strange artifacts, ancient masks, tarnished silver objects, and crumbling books bound in leather. "This is incredible," Miller whispered, running a hand along a shelf filled with occult texts. Gatson kept his weapon raised, his eyes darting nervously from shadow to shadow. "I don't like this, Miller. This place feels wrong." They reached a central pedestal where a large, ornate mirror stood. The mirror's surface was clouded with age, but as they approached, the cloudiness began to dissipate, revealing a distorted reflection of the chamber. The melody from the music box seemed to emanate from the mirror itself. As Miller and Gatson stared into the mirror, the reflection shifted, transforming into a vision of a breathtaking, yet unsettling city. Buildings of strange, angular design rose towards a sickly green sky. The architecture was unlike anything Akari had ever seen, a blend of ancient and futuristic styles. Within the city's center, a figure stood bathed in the green light. It was an older woman, her face partially obscured by shadow, but Akari recognized the familiar curve of her nose, the way her hair was pulled back. It was her grandmother. The vision flickered, then vanished, leaving them staring at the clouded surface of the mirror once more. Miller gasped. "Did you see that?" he asked, his voice filled with awe and disbelief. Gatson, however, looked pale. "That wasn't real," he muttered. "It was just a trick of the light." But Miller knew better. He felt a certainty that the mirror had shown them something real, something important. Miller understood. The mirror wasn't just a reflection, it was a gateway. And the music box, the melody, it was the key to opening it fully. He looked at Gatson, a silent plea in his eyes. "We need to stabilize the connection," he said, reaching for the music box. But before he could, a sudden wave of energy surged through the chamber, throwing them both to the ground. Simultaneously, Akari felt a powerful pull, a sense of urgency she couldn't explain.
She instinctively knew what she had to do.
Leaving the antique shop behind, she raced towards the beach, the gray stone clutched tightly in her hand. The melody from the music box echoed in her mind, urging her forward. She had to reach the ocean, to somehow connect with the vision she had seen in the mirror. The fate of something, or someone, depended on it. Miller carefully positioned the music box on the pedestal. The intricate carvings seemed to writhe in the dim light. Gatson watched, his hand instinctively hovering near his sidearm. The melody, a haunting, almost mournful tune, began to play. The air in the chamber grew colder. The green sky in the mirror intensified, swirling with unnatural energy. Flickering images, fleeting glimpses of winged figures and towering structures, danced within its depths.
A low hum resonated through the floor, vibrating up through their boots.
Miller felt a pressure in his temples, a strange disorientation. He knew the connection was strengthening, becoming more volatile. "Gatson, be ready for anything," he warned, his voice tight with apprehension. The reflection wasn't just a city anymore, it felt alive. A sense of being watched settled over them, heavy and suffocating. The music swelled, pulling at something deep within Miller, a forgotten memory, a sense of destiny. He wondered if they were truly prepared for what lay beyond.
The city in the mirror exploded with detail.
Towering spires, impossibly thin and sharp, pierced the sickly green sky.
Shadowy figures flitted through the streets, their forms indistinct, almost spectral.
Strange symbols, glowing with an inner light, adorned the buildings, symbols that resonated with a primal unease within Miller. Gatson shifted, his eyes scanning the periphery of the chamber, alert for any sign of movement. The humming intensified, now a palpable vibration that rattled their bones. The reflection wasn't static, it was breathing, evolving. A colossal structure, resembling a cathedral but built from obsidian and bone, dominated the cityscape. From its highest point, a single, piercing light shone directly at them, a beacon, a challenge. Miller felt a pull, an irresistible urge to step forward, to cross the threshold. He fought against it, clinging to reason, to the knowledge that this could be a trap. The music box continued its haunting melody, a siren song luring them closer to the unknown. Gatson's face was grim, etched with a mixture of fear and grim determination. He'd seen things in his career, things that defied explanation, but this was different. The raw energy emanating from the mirror was unsettling, almost predatory. He tightened his grip on his weapon, his knuckles white. "What is that thing?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Miller didn't answer, his gaze fixed on the swirling cityscape. He was lost in the labyrinth of the reflection, trying to decipher its secrets. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, the knowledge that the fate of something, perhaps more than just themselves, rested on his shoulders. The light from the obsidian cathedral intensified, bathing their faces in an eerie green glow. Gatson knew they were walking a dangerous path, a path into the heart of something ancient and powerful. He just hoped they could survive the journey. Miller reached out, his hand trembling slightly as it approached the mirror's surface. The reflection of his hand shimmered and distorted, as if the glass itself was alive. He hesitated, a wave of doubt washing over him. Was he making a mistake? Was this gateway truly safe? The music box's melody seemed to quicken, urging him forward. He felt a strange connection to the city in the mirror, a sense of familiarity, as if he had been there before, in a dream or a past life. The air crackled with energy, and a faint scent of ozone filled the chamber. He closed his eyes for a moment, gathering his courage. He had come too far to turn back now. He took a deep breath and pushed his hand through the surface. Miller's hand vanished into the mirror's surface, swallowed by a swirling vortex of green energy. A jolt of power surged through him, a feeling of both exhilaration and terror. He pulled his hand back, and the vortex intensified, expanding outwards. The force of the energy pulled at Gatson, dragging him towards the mirror. "Miller!" Gatson yelled,
struggling to maintain his footing. He grabbed onto Miller's arm, desperately trying to hold on. But the energy was too strong. With a final surge, Gatson was pulled through the mirror, disappearing into the swirling green abyss. The music box sputtered and died, leaving the chamber in an eerie silence. The mirror returned to its normal reflective state, showing only the dusty shelves and forgotten relics. But something had irrevocably changed. The green energy clung to Miller's hand, pulsing like a second heartbeat. He stared at it, mesmerized and apprehensive. The air around the antique mirror grew colder, a stark contrast to the humid room. Gatson took a step back, his hand instinctively reaching for the worn handle of his revolver. "Miller, what have you done?" he asked, his voice tight with concern. Miller didn't answer. He felt different. Stronger, somehow. A strange clarity flooded his mind, thoughts racing at an impossible speed. Images flashed behind his eyes, swirling landscapes, impossible architecture, and fleeting glimpses of faces he didn't recognize, yet felt intimately connected to. The mirror's surface rippled, the green energy intensifying, and a faint whisper echoed in the room, a language he couldn't understand, yet somehow comprehended. It felt ancient, powerful, and undeniably alluring. He noticed his reflection in the mirror was subtly altered. His eyes held a deeper green hue, and a faint tracery of glowing lines seemed to map beneath his skin. This wasn't just a reflection, it was something more. Gatson leveled his revolver, his finger hovering over the trigger. He didn't trust this. He'd spent his life chasing shadows, dealing with the bizarre and inexplicable, but this felt different. This felt dangerous. "Miller, step away from the mirror," he repeated, his voice firm but laced with urgency. Miller remained motionless, lost in a trance. The green light pulsed faster, and the whisper intensified, seeming to seep into the very walls of the room. The room itself seemed to shift, the familiar objects subtly altering their shapes. A bookshelf appeared taller, the shadows deeper, and the air grew thick with an unfamiliar scent, ozone and something else, something akin to blooming night flowers. Gatson noticed a faint distortion in the space around the mirror, as if reality itself was bending to its will. He knew he had to act before Miller became completely consumed by whatever was emanating from that cursed glass. Gatson's hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of the decision he had to make. He'd seen too much to hesitate. He had to protect Miller, even if he didn't understand what he was facing. The green light from the mirror seemed to be affecting him, a subtle pull, a whisper of promises he couldn't quite grasp. He tightened his grip on the revolver, the cold steel a comforting presence in the unsettling atmosphere. He knew firing a shot might not stop whatever was happening, but it was the only way to break the connection, to sever Miller's link to the unknown power. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the confrontation. He had a feeling this wasn't just about saving Miller, it was about saving the world from something ancient and terrible. Miller slowly turned, his gaze meeting Gatson's. His eyes, now glowing with an eerie green light, held no trace of the man Gatson knew. A faint smile played on his lips, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Don't," Miller said, his voice deeper, richer, and laced with an unfamiliar resonance. "You don't understand." The green energy around his hand began to coalesce, forming intricate patterns that shimmered and shifted like living constellations. The whisper from the mirror intensified, now a clear, coherent voice speaking directly into Miller's mind. "He cannot interfere," the voice commanded. "The gateway is opening." Gatson felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't Miller anymore. Something else was in control. Something powerful. He realized with growing horror that he was too late. With a surge of blinding green light, the energy from Miller's hand erupted, tearing a hole in reality itself. The mirror's surface dissolved, replaced by a swirling vortex of color and light, a gateway to another world. Gatson instinctively threw himself forward, shielding his eyes from the intense glow. He felt a powerful force pushing against him, threatening to pull him into the chaos. The air crackled with energy, and the scent of night-blooming flowers intensified, almost overwhelming him. He saw glimpses of the landscape beyond the portal, towering crystalline structures, floating islands, and skies filled with two moons. The whisper from the mirror became a deafening roar, and the alien voice echoed in his mind, "The time has come."
The portal stabilized, a shimmering doorway to the unknown, and Miller, or whatever now inhabited his body, took a step forward, ready to embrace whatever lay beyond.
Gatson stumbled back, shielding his eyes from the intense light.
The vortex pulsed, growing wider, revealing fleeting images, towering crystalline structures, skies of swirling purple, and vegetation unlike anything he'd ever seen.
Miller stood at the edge of the gateway, a figure transformed.
The unsettling smile remained, a chilling mockery of his former self.
"Come," Miller urged, his voice resonating with an otherworldly quality. "There's so much you need to see. So much you need to understand." Gatson hesitated.
This wasn't the Miller he knew, the man who'd confided in him about his research.
This was something else.
A dangerous power radiated from him, a power that both frightened and compelled Gatson. He noticed subtle shifts in Miller's features, almost imperceptible, like a mask slowly settling into place. The air crackled with energy, raising the hairs on Gatson's arms. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that stepping through that portal would be a journey from which there might be no return.
Yet, the desperate plea in Miller's eyes, the underlying sadness masked by the alien confidence, tugged at something within him. He couldn't abandon Miller, not now. Not when he was clearly in danger, even if the danger was of his own making.
The transition was disorienting. One moment they were in the dimly lit laboratory, the next they were enveloped in a kaleidoscope of colors and sensations. Gatson felt a strange pressure on his skin, a tingling sensation that seemed to burrow beneath his flesh. When the swirling subsided, they stood on alien soil. Towering crystalline structures pierced the purple sky, their surfaces shimmering with an internal light. The air was thick with the scent of unfamiliar flora, sweet and cloying.
Strange, bioluminescent plants pulsed with soft light, illuminating the landscape in an ethereal glow.
Miller seemed calmer here, almost serene. The unsettling smile was gone, replaced by an expression of quiet satisfaction. "Welcome," he said, his voice now softer, more melodic.
"To Xylos. A place beyond your comprehension." Gatson looked around, overwhelmed by the alien beauty and the palpable sense of otherness.
He felt utterly exposed, vulnerable in this strange, new world. He reached for his sidearm, a futile gesture against whatever forces were at play here. Miller seemed to anticipate his movement, a flicker of amusement in his eyes.
"You won't need that," he said.
"Here, your weapons are useless."
A low hum resonated through the ground, vibrating in Gatson's bones.
Miller led Gatson towards one of the crystalline structures, its surface covered in intricate carvings that seemed to shift and change as they watched. The structure pulsed with a soft, green light, mirroring the energy that had opened the portal.
"This is the Nexus," Miller explained. "The heart of Xylos.
It's where the energy flows, where reality bends." He touched the crystal surface, and a wave of energy emanated from it, washing over Gatson. Images flooded his mind, visions of vast, star-spanning civilizations, of beings of pure energy, of cosmic events beyond human understanding. It was overwhelming, terrifying, and strangely beautiful.
Gatson staggered, clutching his head. What is happening to me?" he gasped.
Miller steadied him.
"I'm showing you," he said. "Showing you the truth. The universe is far more complex than you believe. And you, Gatson, are a part of it."
Gatson struggled to process what he was seeing, what he was feeling. Miller wasn't just showing him images, he was sharing something fundamental. Something that was altering his perception of reality. He felt a growing sense of unease, a feeling that he was losing himself in this alien world. A strange warmth spread through Gatson's hand. He stared in disbelief as a faint green light began to emanate from his palm, mirroring the glow of the Nexus. It wasn't painful, but unsettling, like a foreign energy was taking root within him. Miller watched him with an expression that was difficult to decipher, a mixture of triumph and regret. "It's beginning," Miller said softly.
"The connection. The merging."
Gatson tried to pull his hand away, but he couldn't.
The green light intensified, spreading up his arm, a tingling sensation becoming more pronounced.
He felt a strange pull, a resonance with the energy of Xylos, a sense of belonging he'd never experienced before. But it was a belonging that felt wrong.
It felt like a surrender. He looked at Miller, desperation in his eyes. "What are you doing to me?" he managed to ask.
Miller's gaze was distant, lost in the swirling patterns of the crystalline structure.
"I'm showing you who you truly are, Gatson," he replied. "The potential you always possessed."
The green light consumed Gatson, merging with Miller's energy until they were two aspects of a single entity. The Nexus pulsed with power, and a new portal opened, not a simple gateway, but a shimmering Terran reality, revealing a dimension beyond Xylos, a place of impossible geometries and shifting colors. Now, Miller, or rather, the entity they had become, said, his voice a chorus of voices, both familiar and alien.
"We move on. There are others who need to be shown the truth. Others who must join us." Gatson felt a sense of inevitability, a surrender to a destiny he didn't understand. He looked back at the path they had traveled, at the life he had left behind. It felt like a distant dream.
The pull of the new dimension was overwhelming, a siren's call to the unknown. He took a step forward, hand in hand with Miller, ready to face whatever lay beyond.
The portal shimmered, beckoning them into the infinite.
The air crackled with unfamiliar energy.
Gatson felt a strange pull, a yearning to step into the shimmering anomaly.
Miller, now subtly radiating the same green light as Gatson's palm, reached out a hand. "This is it," Miller said, his voice resonating with a newfound power. "The source. The origin of the Nexus's energy."
"But be warned, Gatson. This dimension, it's not welcoming."
The portal pulsed, and within the swirling colors, fleeting images appeared, colossal, crystalline structures, and creatures of pure light. A sense of immense age and power emanated from the other side, a power that both fascinated and terrified Gatson. He hesitated, the foreign energy within him thrumming with anticipation. This wasn't just another portal, it felt like a doorway to creation itself. He glanced at Miller, seeking reassurance, but saw only determination in his friend's eyes.
"Ready?"
Miller asked, a hint of a smile playing on his lips.
Gatson took a deep breath, steeling himself.
He nodded, the green light in his palm intensifying.
Together, they stepped into the unknown.
The sensation was disorienting, a rush of colors, a feeling of being pulled apart and reassembled.
Then, just as suddenly, it stopped.
The ground beneath their feet felt strangely soft, yielding slightly with each step. Purple moss, emitting a soft, ethereal glow, carpeted the island.
Towering above them were crystalline trees, their structures impossibly intricate, like frozen fireworks. Orb-like lights pulsed gently on their branches, casting shifting patterns of color across the landscape.
Winged creatures, resembling a cross between birds and butterflies, with scales that shimmered with every color imaginable, danced in the air. The air itself hummed with a low, resonant frequency, a constant vibration that seemed to penetrate their very bones.
"Incredible," Gatson breathed, gazing around in awe. "It's alive."
Miller nodded, his green glow dimmer now, but still present. "This dimension is sustained by pure energy," he explained. "The crystalline structures are conduits, drawing power from the core of this realm. And those creatures, they're manifestations of that energy, living embodiments of its essence." Suddenly, a shadow fell over them. A large, serpentine creature, composed entirely of light, descended from the sky, its form constantly shifting and reforming. It regarded them with an intelligence that seemed ancient and vast.
The light serpent pulsed, its form rippling with vibrant hues.
It didn't seem hostile, more curious, its luminous eyes fixed on them with an unnerving intensity.
A voice, not audible but felt directly within their minds, echoed in their thoughts. "Intruders. You carry the echo of the Nexus."
Gatson felt a shiver run down his spine. "We mean no harm," Miller projected back, his mind reaching out to the creature.
"We seek knowledge, understanding."
The serpent remained motionless for a moment, then slowly lowered its head, allowing them to approach.
"The Nexus is a wound," the voice resonated.
"A tear in the fabric of realities. Your presence, it stirs the old power." The serpent then gestured with a shimmering appendage towards a massive crystalline structure in the distance, a structure far larger and more complex than the others. "The heart of the realm," it communicated.
It holds the answer. But be warned, the path is fraught with peril. The guardians do not take kindly to trespassers. The closer they got to the heart of the realm, the stronger the resonant hum became. The crystalline structure was breathtaking in its scale, a towering monument of light and energy, its surface covered in intricate carvings that seemed to writhe and shift before their eyes. The carvings depicted scenes of cosmic events, of stars being born and galaxies colliding, and of beings of pure energy engaged in battles of unimaginable scale. Gatson felt overwhelmed by the sheer age and power emanating from the structure. The light serpent floated alongside them, a silent observer. "These carvings tell the history of this realm," Miller said, his voice hushed with reverence. "A history far older than our own." As they reached the base of the structure, a section of the crystal shimmered and dissolved, revealing an entrance, a dark, swirling vortex that seemed to lead into the heart of the crystal. The serpent pulsed again. "The path is open. But be prepared to face your own reflections. The heart reveals truths, both beautiful and terrifying." Gatson hesitated, his hand instinctively reaching for the energy within him. He felt a growing sense of unease, a premonition of something dangerous. "Are you sure about this, Miller?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Miller met his gaze, his eyes filled with a conviction that both reassured and unnerved Gatson. "We've come too far to turn back now, Gatson. The answers we seek lie within. We must face whatever awaits us." He stepped towards the vortex, the green light in his hand intensifying. The light serpent inclined its head. "The journey is yours. Remember the balance. And do not disturb the slumbering ones." Miller took a deep breath and stepped into the swirling darkness. Gatson exchanged a worried glance with the serpent, then followed, the green light enveloping him as he plunged into the unknown depths of the heart of the realm. The vortex closed behind them, leaving the crystalline heart silent once more. "Are you sure about this, Miller?" Gatson repeated, the hum vibrating through his very bones. Miller's expression remained resolute, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. The voice, it spoke of a convergence. A potential to stabilize the weakening barriers. He gestured towards the heart of the realm. "If the barriers fail completely, the Shadowlands will bleed into our world. We have to try." Gatson ran a hand through his hair. He trusted Miller's instincts, but this felt different, heavier. The air crackled with an unseen energy, making the hairs on his arms stand on end. He noticed tiny, shimmering threads of dark energy snaking around the base of the crystal, almost imperceptible, yet undeniably present. "What about the serpent? It seemed aware of us." Miller nodded slowly. "It's a guardian, of sorts. It tests those who seek to enter. Its curiosity doesn't equate to benevolence." He took a step forward, his gaze unwavering. "We proceed with caution, Gatson. But we proceed." The crystalline carvings on the heart pulsed faster, the light intensifying, casting long, dancing shadows around them. A low growl echoed from the depths of the crystal, a sound that resonated not in their ears, but in their souls. Miller reached out, his fingertips brushing against the cool, smooth surface of the crystal. A jolt of energy surged through him, not painful, but intensely powerful. He closed his eyes, focusing on the resonant hum, trying to decipher the patterns within the light. He felt a connection forming, a merging of his consciousness with the heart's energy. Visions flooded his mind, swirling galaxies, ancient civilizations, and glimpses of a darkness lurking just beyond the veil. He saw the weakening barriers, the Shadowlands encroaching, a tide of despair threatening to engulf their world. The serpent's presence felt closer now, a silent observer. He sensed a warning, a subtle vibration of unease emanating from the crystal itself. It wasn't a direct threat, but a plea, a desperate attempt to communicate. He pulled his hand back, a look of grim determination on his face. "The convergence is happening faster than anticipated," he said, his voice strained. "The Shadowlands are actively probing the weakened points." Gatson watched Miller, his concern deepening. He'd seen this look before, the one that preceded moments of intense focus, sometimes bordering on obsession. "What did you see?" he asked, his voice low. Miller opened his eyes, the intensity still there, but now laced with a hint of worry.
The barriers are fracturing. The Shadowlands aren't just encroaching, they're reaching out, actively seeking vulnerabilities. He looked at the shimmering threads of dark energy around the base of the crystal. Those are tendrils. They're probing for weaknesses. We need to reinforce the defenses, and quickly. He turned to Gatson. There's a chamber within the heart, a nexus of power. If we can activate it, we might be able to stabilize the barriers. But it won't be easy. The path is guarded. A sudden tremor shook the ground beneath their feet. The crystalline carvings on the heart began to glow with an angry red light. The growl from within deepened into a deafening roar. The heart of the realm pulsed with a blinding red light, the intensity forcing Gatson and Miller to shield their eyes. The dark energy tendrils around its base writhed and pulsed, growing thicker, more aggressive. The air crackled with chaotic energy, making it difficult to breathe. The ground trembled violently, threatening to swallow them whole. The resonant hum shifted into a discordant screech, a sound of immense pain and power. A voice, no longer felt within their minds, but booming from the crystal itself, echoed across the landscape. Intruders! You dare disturb the slumbering power? The red light intensified, forming a swirling vortex around the heart. From within the vortex, shadowy figures began to coalesce, their forms indistinct but undeniably menacing. The serpent, which had been silently observing, let out a piercing shriek and lunged towards them, its luminous eyes burning with fury. The light serpent struck with blinding speed, its luminous body a blur of motion. Gatson reacted instantly, drawing his weapon and attempting to deflect the attack. Miller, however, remained still, his eyes fixed on the serpent. He understood that brute force wouldn't work. This was a guardian, not a mindless beast. He reached out, not with aggression, but with a gesture of peace, a silent plea for understanding. We mean no harm, he projected, focusing his intent. The serpent paused, hovering in mid-air, its luminous eyes studying them intently. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then, with a final, mournful cry, the serpent changed course, veering away from them and disappearing into the swirling red light surrounding the heart. The red light began to subside, replaced by a soft, golden glow. The tremors lessened, and the discordant screech faded into a gentle hum. The path to the heart's nexus remained, but the guardian had yielded. A new challenge awaited. Miller's lips moved, forming words Gatson couldn't quite hear. It wasn't a language he recognized, yet somehow, he understood the urgency. It feeds, Miller finally managed, his voice raspy. On belief. On fear. The more they believe in its power, the stronger it becomes. Gatson felt a chill crawl down his spine. This wasn't just some magical anomaly, it was something far more insidious. He glanced at the writhing tendrils, now reaching higher, closer. They seemed to sense their presence, probing, testing. The air grew heavy, charged with a palpable sense of dread. He knew they had to stop it, and fast. But how do you fight something that thrives on belief? Something that existed outside the realm of conventional understanding? He reached for his own weapon, a familiar comfort in the escalating chaos. What can we do? He asked, his voice strained. Miller didn't answer immediately. He closed his eyes, taking a deep, shuddering breath. We have to break their belief, he said, his voice gaining strength. Show them, it's not real. The red light intensified, bathing the chamber in an oppressive glow. The dark tendrils snaked across the walls, pulsating with malevolent energy. Gatson raised his weapon, aiming at the heart of the pulsating light. He fired, but the blast seemed to dissipate harmlessly against the energy field surrounding the heart. Miller began chanting, a low, rhythmic sound that seemed to vibrate through the very foundations of the realm. The chanting wasn't in any language Gatson knew, but the tone was insistent, almost hypnotic. The tendrils hesitated, their movements slowing. The red light flickered, as if struggling against the sound. Gatson realized Miller wasn't just chanting, he was projecting something, a counter-narrative, a challenge to the heart's power. He felt a strange pull, a sense of disorientation, as if his own beliefs were being questioned. Could Miller actually be weakening it? Or was it just a temporary reprieve? The tendrils began to writhe again, more violently this time, as if fighting back against Miller's influence.
Gatson felt a surge of adrenaline. He couldn't let Miller falter. He focused on the energy field surrounding the heart, searching for a weakness, a point of entry. He noticed a subtle distortion, a slight ripple in the fabric of reality. It was barely perceptible, but it was there. He adjusted his aim, focusing all his energy on that single point. He fired again, this time channeling his own belief, his own will, into the shot. The beam of energy struck the distortion, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then, a blinding flash of white light erupted, followed by a deafening roar. The red light surrounding the heart flickered violently, then began to dim. The tendrils recoiled, shrinking back into the darkness. The oppressive red light receded, replaced by a soft, golden glow. The chaotic energy that had filled the chamber began to dissipate, leaving behind a sense of quiet stillness. The dark tendrils retreated, disappearing into the shadows. Miller continued to chant, his voice now barely a whisper. He swayed slightly, as if drained of energy. Gatson lowered his weapon, watching him carefully. The heart of the realm pulsed with a gentle, rhythmic light, no longer menacing, but peaceful. It felt different, somehow cleansed. He approached Miller, concern etched on his face. "Are you all right?" he asked. Miller looked up, a faint smile on his lips. "It's contained," he said, his voice weak. "For now." Gatson extended a hand to help Miller to his feet. The old mage leaned on him, his strength clearly depleted. They stood together, gazing at the heart of the realm. The golden light illuminated the chamber, casting long shadows on the walls. The air was still, the silence broken only by Miller's shallow breaths. "What now?" Gatson asked. Miller looked at him, his eyes filled with a mixture of exhaustion and determination. "Now," he said, "we find out what this thing truly is. And how to prevent it from ever returning." He straightened, a spark of his old fire returning to his eyes. Gatson nodded, a sense of renewed purpose filling him. The fight wasn't over. It had just begun. "Are you all right, Miller?" Gatson asked, his voice tight with worry. The old mage nodded slowly, his breathing ragged. "Just drained," Miller rasped, clutching his chest. "The heart, it's more powerful than I anticipated. The barrier, it's weakening faster than I thought possible." Gatson scanned the chamber again, his eyes tracing the intricate patterns of energy swirling around the heart. The golden light, though calming, felt fragile, like a thin veil over something immense and volatile. He noticed a faint tremor in the floor, barely perceptible, but undeniably there. It wasn't the chaotic energy they'd battled before, this was a deeper, more resonant vibration. "We need to reinforce the shield," Gatson stated, urgency lacing his tone. "Before whatever caused that distortion returns." Miller managed a weak smile. "I agree. But I don't know how. The ancient wards are failing. Centuries of accumulated magic, it's not something to fix quickly." Gatson felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Time was not on their side. The golden light seemed to pulse faster, mirroring the growing unease within him. He had a feeling this was just the beginning. The runes on the chamber walls pulsed with an ethereal light, their intricate patterns shifting and reforming. Gatson ran a hand along one, feeling the faint hum of power beneath his fingertips. "These wards, they're tied to the ley lines of this realm," Miller explained, his voice gaining a sliver of strength. "The heart draws power from them. If the lines are disrupted..." He trailed off, shaking his head. "The entire realm could collapse." Gatson's gaze drifted to a section of the ceiling, where a single rune was flickering erratically. It was a key rune, one that regulated the flow of energy between the heart and the ley lines. He realized with a jolt that the distortion he'd sensed earlier wasn't just a ripple in reality, it was a breach in the warding system, a point of vulnerability. "That rune," Gatson said, pointing upwards. "It's unstable. Something is actively trying to sever the connection." Miller squinted, following Gatson's gaze. "Impossible," he murmured. "That rune has stood for millennia. It's impervious to anything." But Gatson knew better. He felt it in the air, a subtle shift in the magical currents, a sense of encroaching darkness. Dark, shadowy tendrils snaked towards the flickering rune, attempting to corrupt its golden light. They writhed and pulsed, like living shadows trying to extinguish a flame. The rune fought back, its light intensifying, but the tendrils were relentless. Gatson felt a surge of protective energy, instinctively reaching out to bolster the ward. He channeled his own magic, weaving a shield of pure light around the rune, but the tendrils were persistent, probing for weaknesses. Miller watched with a mixture of awe and apprehension. "What are those things?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Shadow entities," Gatson replied grimly. "They feed on magical energy, on the very essence of this realm. They're drawn to the heart's power like moths to a flame." The tendrils intensified their assault, their shadowy forms becoming more defined. Gatson felt a growing pressure in his mind, a subtle attempt to infiltrate his thoughts, to sow doubt and fear. He pushed back, focusing his will, determined to protect the heart and the realm from this encroaching darkness. He knew this wasn't just a battle of magic, it was a battle for the soul of the realm. Gatson unleashed a torrent of golden energy, a blinding wave of light that slammed into the shadowy tendrils. They recoiled momentarily, hissing and spitting as the light burned against their forms. He continued to weave intricate patterns of magic, reinforcing the ward around the rune, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. Miller watched in amazement, his eyes wide with wonder. You're incredible," he breathed. "I haven't seen magic like that in centuries." Gatson didn't respond, his entire focus consumed by the battle. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his muscles strained with the effort. The shadowy tendrils were resilient, constantly reforming, adapting to his attacks. He knew he couldn't hold them off forever. He needed to find the source of their power, the point from which they were being unleashed. He scanned the chamber again, his senses heightened, searching for any sign of the enemy. The air crackled with energy, the golden light pulsing with a frantic rhythm. He was locked in a desperate struggle, a lone warrior against a tide of darkness. With a final surge of power, Gatson shattered the last of the shadowy tendrils. The rune on the ceiling flared with intense golden light, its protective barrier strengthened. The oppressive darkness receded, replaced by a sense of relief. Gatson collapsed to his knees, breathing heavily, his body trembling with exhaustion. Miller rushed to his side, offering a steadying hand. "You did it," Miller said, his voice filled with admiration. "You saved the rune, you saved the realm." As the golden light subsided, Gatson noticed something he hadn't seen before. A section of the wall, previously hidden by shadows, had slid open, revealing a narrow passage. It was dark and mysterious, leading into the depths of the heart of the realm. "What's that?" Gatson asked, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. Miller peered into the passage. "I don't know," he replied. "But I have a feeling it's connected to what caused this attack. And I have a feeling we need to go in." He looked at Gatson, a determined glint in his eyes. "Are you ready?" Gatson sagged against the cold stone wall, the golden energy slowly receding from his body. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his breath came in ragged gasps. Ilara rushed to his side, her hand reaching out to steady him. "Gatson, are you all right?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. He managed a weak smile. I think so. It's over." The oppressive darkness that had clung to the chamber for so long had finally dissipated, driven back by the power of the rune and his own magic. The golden light pulsed warmly, a beacon of hope in the ancient, forgotten place. He looked up at the rune, its light now a steady, reassuring glow. It seemed stronger than before, its protective barrier reinforced by their combined efforts. The shadowy tendrils were gone, their threat neutralized. He felt a profound sense of accomplishment, but also a deep weariness. The battle had taken its toll. Ilara squeezed his hand. "You were incredible," she said softly. "You saved us all." He shook his head. "We saved ourselves, Ilara. Together." He looked around the chamber, taking in the intricate carvings on the walls, the dust-covered artifacts, the silent testament to a forgotten civilization. The darkness had tried to consume it all,
but the light had prevailed.
Ilara's gaze softened as she looked at Gatson.
The exhaustion in his eyes mirrored the weariness in her own heart, but there was also a profound sense of gratitude and admiration. She gently touched his arm, her fingers tracing the lines of his calloused skin.
"Thank you, Gatson," she whispered. "For everything."
He met her gaze, his own eyes filled with a mixture of relief and affection.
"It wasn't just me, Ilara," he replied. "We did this together. Your knowledge of the ancient texts, your unwavering belief, it was essential." He leaned in and gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You are far stronger than you realize."
A small smile touched her lips.
"And you, my brave mage, are far more selfless than you let on."
The silence that followed was not awkward, but filled with a comfortable understanding. They had faced a terrifying darkness, and emerged victorious, their bond strengthened by the shared experience. The golden light of the rune seemed to intensify, as if acknowledging the depth of their connection. It was a silent affirmation of their partnership, a promise of future battles fought and won, together. The air hummed with residual magic, a testament to the power they had unleashed.
The chamber, once shrouded in darkness and despair, was now bathed in a warm, golden glow.
The light from the rune illuminated the intricate carvings on the walls, revealing scenes of a forgotten past. Warriors in shining armor, celestial beings, and strange, otherworldly creatures were depicted in exquisite detail. The dust motes danced in the light, creating a mesmerizing effect. It felt as though they had stepped back in time, into a world of myth and legend. The air was still and silent, broken only by the faint hum of residual magic. The weight of centuries seemed to lift from the chamber, replaced by a sense of peace and tranquility. The protective barrier around the rune pulsed gently, safeguarding the secrets held within. The victory over the shadowy tendrils had not only saved them from immediate danger, but had also preserved a piece of history, a reminder of a civilization that had once thrived in this very place. The golden light seemed to whisper tales of courage, sacrifice, and the enduring power of hope.
Gatson and Ilara stood side by side, gazing at the glowing rune. A faint golden light emanated from their hands, intertwining with the rune's glow.
It was a subtle connection, a merging of their energies, a testament to their shared power and their unwavering bond.
The light pulsed gently, creating a harmonious symphony of energy.
They felt a sense of unity, a shared purpose that transcended their individual strengths. The rune seemed to respond to their combined energy, its light growing brighter, its protective barrier becoming even stronger. It was as though they were becoming a part of the rune itself, protectors of its power and guardians of its secrets. This connection was not merely magical, it was deeply personal, a reflection of the trust and affection they held for each other. It was a symbol of their commitment to safeguarding the world from the forces of darkness.
Ilara turned to Gatson, a warm smile gracing her lips.
"We did it," she said, her voice filled with quiet triumph.
He returned the smile, his eyes reflecting the golden light of the rune. "Yes, we did."
They looked towards the exit of the chamber, a sense of hope filling their hearts. The darkness had been defeated, the threat neutralized. They had faced their fears and emerged stronger, their bond forged in the fires of adversity. The world outside awaited, with its own challenges and dangers, but they were ready to face them, together. They had found strength in each other, and in the power of the ancient rune. The golden light continued to glow, a beacon of hope in a world often shrouded in darkness. Their journey was far from over, but for now, they allowed themselves a moment of peace, a moment of gratitude, a moment of shared triumph.